In 1992 in Bogota, Colombia, two drug kingpins, Don Luis and Don Fabio, were seen having a serious conversation in one of Don Luis' houses. At that time, Fabio said he was going to leave his life of crime and want to start a new life with his family. Then, Fabio gives the flash disk with their business information to Don Luis and claims that he does not have a copy of the information on the flash disk. Luis seemed to accept Fabio's decision to retire from the cartel, but behind it, Luis was very sure that Fabio had all the copies of important information related to their business, and it would be a threat to his business in the future. Therefore, after Fabio left, Don Luis directly ordered his trusted son Marco to kill Fabio and his family. Meanwhile, Fabio, who had anticipated Don Luis' actions, then hurried home. Arriving home, he then gave a flash drive containing information about Don Luis' drug empire to Catalia, or his 9-year-old daughter. He also gave Catalia the address of someone in Chicago who would look after her if her parents died. Soon after, Don Luis' men attacked Fabio's residence. They managed to kill all of Fabio's men and killed Fabio and his wife right in front of Catalia, who was sitting quietly. Marco then approached Catalia and asked for the whereabouts of the flash drive containing copies of information about Don Luis' drug business. But Catalia bravely cuts Marco's hand and runs away from there. Seen from how Catalia escaped from the pursuit of Don Luis' men, the little girl seemed to have been taught and trained by her father to anticipate a situation that could endanger her life. After successfully escaping from the pursuit of Don Luis' men, Catalia went to the United States Embassy. She was finally granted entry into the United States and had a new identity after handing the flash drive her father gave to the embassy staff. Although American officials attempt to transfer her into the foster care system, Catalia is trying to trace the whereabouts of a person in Chicago who her late father had alerted her to. Catalia finally arrived in Chicago and came to a place. It turns out that she is looking for a man named Emilio, who is none other than her uncle. Emilio looked very relieved and happy after meeting his niece. The man then took Catalia to his house, where the grandmother welcomed the arrival of Catalia, who had been waiting for so long. The next day, Emilio enrolled Catalia at a nearby school. But Catalia refused and instead asked her uncle to train her to be an assassin. Emilio agreed to train the little girl, but on one condition: she had to be a smart assassin, which meant she had to continue her education. 15 years later, two police officers are seen enjoying their lunch in the car. Shortly after, their car was hit by a car driven by a drunk woman who was none other than Catalia. In the end, Catalia was arrested and taken to the police station. Because she was very drunk, the police had difficulty interrogating her and finally put her directly into a holding cell for interrogation the next day. At the same time, the police arrived, who brought a prisoner named Gennaro, who will be temporarily deposited at the police station before continuing the legal process that the man will undergo. On the other hand, Catalia, who only pretended to be drunk to trick the police into getting herself into a holding cell, then got ready to carry out her actions. After successfully unlocking her cell door, she then slipped through the ventilation duct and exited the restroom, where she managed to knock out one of the security guards. Catalia then heads to Gennaro's holding cell and kills the man.
Who are you?
Not room service.
Catalia rushed back to her cell after painting her autograph in the shape of a Catalia flower on Gennaro's body. She made it back to her cell to secure her alibi just before the roving cops arrived in front of her cell. The next day, Catalia was released. An FBI agent named James Ross was assigned to investigate Gennaro's murder. Ross had previously investigated more than 20 murder cases committed by someone who left its signature in the form of a Catalia flower painting drawn on each victim's body. Catalia has apparently become an accomplished assassin, with Emilio acting as the intermediary who awarded her the contract. With every murder she commits, Catalia leaves her signature, a painting of Catalia's flowers, and hopes to attract Don Luis' attention so that she can avenge him. The scene then switches and shows a CIA agent named Richard coming to Don Luis at his hideout and informing him of a series of murders committed by Catalia, in which Richard tries to warn him. On the other hand, Emilio comes to Catalia to give a new employment contract, where the target of her assassination is a man named Wugard. When Emilio finally finds out about Catalia's intentions and the fact that she has targeted people connected to Don Luis, he pleads with her to stop so as not to put her life and family at risk. But Catalia refuses and is determined to continue her revenge. After that, Catalia spends a night with her boyfriend, Danny, during which she hides her true identity from him using a pseudonym, Jennifer. Danny is a painter and wants to make Catalia the object of his painting. The scene then shows Wugard, a criminal kingpin, at his residence, where there is a pond with sharks. That night, Catalia infiltrates Wugard's house and kills all of his men. But she didn't kill Wugard right away. After drawing the Catalia flower on Wugard's body, she then lures him into the shark pond using a flower. When Wugard is right above the pond and picks up the flower, Catalia appears and shoots him in the leg. The splattered blood immediately attracted the attention of the sharks, which then pulled him into the water and preyed on him. The next day, Agent Ross seemed to find a bright spot behind the Gennaro murder case and realized that Catalia, who was then taken to the police station in a drunken state, was pretending, because she often hides her face from the CCTV cameras. On the other hand, Danny meets a friend at a cafe and shows his friend a photo of Catalia he took while sleeping. Out of curiosity, the man decided to do a background check on Catalia by sending the photo to one of his friends at the police. Meanwhile, Agent Ross, who is working to identify the killer behind more than 20 unsolved murders, all of which left a Catalia orchid flower, gets a new lead in a photo of Catalia sent by Danny's friend. The police immediately tapped Danny's cell phone and found the location of Catalia's whereabouts. Agent Ross immediately checked Catalia's background and ordered his members to arrest her. Catalia, who was always on the lookout for attacks, rushed to escape when she found out that FBI troops had surrounded the apartment building. Catalia rushed out of the room, grabbed her gun, and then fled through the air vent.
Look everywhere! Under him.
Meanwhile, Don Luis, who already knew that Catalia was still alive, immediately ordered Marco to kill her. Marco and some of his men have arrived in the United States and have tracked down Emilio's whereabouts but have not found Catalia. Without thinking, Marco immediately killed Emilio and Catalia's grandmother. Catalia, who tries to reach her uncle to hide from the police, is very surprised to find Emilio and her family have been brutally massacred by Don Luis men. Overwhelmed by anger and grief, she then tracks down Agent Ross and visits him at his home. Catalia is desperate. then threatens Agent Ross that she will kill his wife and children if he refuses to help her.
Don't. You're gonna go to a funeral.
Catalina then forces him to contact CIA agent Richard, who she knows has protected Don Lewis from the law in exchange for his cooperation with American authorities. Agent Ross was forced to comply with Catalina's request and meet Richard in his office. When Richard refuses to reveal the whereabouts of Don Lewis, Catalina intervenes by threatening the safety of him and his family. Finally, Richard couldn't help but reveal information about Don Lewis' whereabouts to Catalina. After getting the information she wanted, Catalina rushed to prepare and flew to Colombia to avenge the death of her family who had been massacred by Don Lewis. Meanwhile, Don Lewis and his men, who had been anticipating a counterattack from Catalina, began to prepare for the drug lord's rescue mission. However, Catalina had caught them ambushing their base first while Don Lewis and his men were working on a plan. Don Lewis was immediately secured to a special room, but Catalina managed to kill all of his men in a short time. Catalina finally came face to face with Marco, who had slaughtered her entire family. The two of them engage in a fierce battle, but Catalina finally kills Marco. Thinking it was safe, Don Lewis rushed out of his hiding place to escape. The man vowed to take revenge on Catalina for everything. Don Lewis then got into a van to escape from there. But on the way, he gets a phone call from Catalina. Don Lewis, who thought that he had managed to escape from Catalina, was surprised by the presence of his specially trained attack dogs in his escape vehicle, which immediately pounced on the drug lord and tore his body to pieces. The film ends by showing Danny being interrogated by Agent Ross for his involvement with Catalina. When the FBI agent stepped out for a few moments, Danny got a call from Catalina, who finally revealed who she was to him. Catalina called Danny from a payphone before boarding the bus back to the United States.